Item number 10, Dr. Pratt.
Thank you, Madam President. Item is override of veto extension of airport concession agreement. A recommendation that the City Council override the Mayor's veto of Resolution 0714 extending the existing food and beverage lease and concession agreement between the City and Varona Enterprises of Florida, Inc. on a month-by-month basis until a new agreement is approved.
First person is Jesse Rigby.
Thank you, Madam President, members of council. I'm Jesse Rigby. I'm an attorney here in town. I do represent Varona Enterprises, but my comments today or tonight are much more general in nature. Issues arising out of the airport concession contract demonstrate that city government is at a crossroads with respect to who has the power in the city to do what or to approve what. The necessary follow-up to what has been said up to this point is also that if you start looking at leases at the Port Authority, they're really no different than leases at the airport. In both cases, those are agreements that are providing money coming back to the city rather than the purchase of services by the city. So the Port Authority should not be treated any differently than the airport. My question is, how can the mayor's assertion to this point of almost unbridled authority be constrained? And it's answered by the charter. The charter, under the initial section under form of government, says there shall be a city council which shall be the governing body of the city, and all legislative powers of the city are vested therein. Section 4.02 provides that the city council has the power to legislate by adopting ordinances and resolutions in the best interests of the city. The mayor's authority is in 4.01, and that is that the mayor shall have the power and duty to enforce the charter and ordinances and resolutions of the city and all applicable county, state, local, and federal governments. So you are the legislative body, not the mayor. You determine what ordinances and resolutions are adopted. And in that fashion, the mayor then simply has the authority and the duty to enforce those legislative actions that you take. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Houston.
Ladies and gentlemen, the real issue that's before you tonight is how much authority the mayor has and what powers remain with the city council. Unfortunately, the city's charter doesn't clearly define the limits of the mayor's authority. Now, for decades, it's been understood that the city council has the authority to approve leases and concessions at the airport, at the Port of Pensacola, and other city-owned property. Now, Mayor Hayward claims that he has sole authority to enter into a 10-year lease at the airport and that the city council has no say in the matter. Mayor Hayward relies on two lawyers' opinions to justify his action. Of course, lawyers' opinions do not have the force of law. Laws are created by the voters in the charter, by the city council in ordinances and resolutions, and by courts. Separation of powers has always been an important feature of American government at the federal, state, and local levels. It's important because it limits the opportunity for abuse of power. Separation of powers is the fundamental, important issue at stake in this matter tonight. Your vote to override the mayor's veto would simply continue the status quo on a month-to-month basis, giving the city time to do things the right way. That's the logical solution, which can be accomplished if you vote to override the mayor's veto. Please consider the consequences of your vote on this matter tonight. The issue is whether the City Council has any authority over the leasing of city-owned property. Now, you don't need me to paint a dire picture. Just look at the legal opinion issued yesterday by Allen Norton and Blue, which concerns the Osceola Golf Course restaurant issue. Some of you, in connection with the charter, indicated opposition to the new charter due to concern about a boss mayor. I would suggest that that's exactly where we sit tonight. If you do not override the mayor's veto, you have effectively surrendered your authority over the leasing of this property, and you have devalued your role as the legislative branch. Is that consistent with the best interest of the citizens of Pensacola? Now, some say that it's wise to allow the mayor to break this logjam. In other words, you've been asked to do the expedient thing. History teaches that when there's a clash between principle and expediency, it's usually wise to choose principle, not expediency. If you agree with that proposition, you should and must vote to override the mayor's veto. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joe Vinson?
I'm not as tall as George, so I'm going to lower this a little bit. Hello, my name is Joe Vinson, resident of the city. I'm here tonight to urge you to override the mayor's veto, and I will tell you why. On the same day as the veto was announced by Mayor Hayward, he announced also that he had unilaterally given the concessions contract to OHM in apparent violation of the City Council's policy. I believe that this action was taken illegally and that eventually this contract will be declared invalid. Now, I have read Mr. Messer's opinion on this matter. Reminds me a little bit about the Upton Sinclair quote about, someone's ability to understand something vis-a-vis their salary, and it reinforces my belief that the council should have its own attorney. Mr. Messer states that the mayor is not bound by council policies or resolutions, only ordinances. And I'm not an attorney. I don't know if that makes me the smart one or the dumb one of the family. But as I read the relevant ordinance, section 1026A, this is the same portion that also has been cited as giving the mayor his authority. So special services may be rendered or special facilities may be provided on such terms as the council may prescribe from time to time. It does not say where the council need prescribe it, so it seems like in the council policies would be a reasonable place to put such prescriptions. So I think that would be considered if and when this matter goes to court, and I have a feeling it probably will. Another thing I think a judge will consider is that the mayor did not claim the unilateral authority to award a concessions contract until after the vendor preferred by the mayor was rejected by this council. To quote just a small portion of what was, I think, a baffling editorial in Sunday's News Journal, if you have a procedure, you stick to it. Speaking more generally, I'm very concerned by what I perceive as a violation of the spirit, if not the letter, of the charter. As I've told this body before, I supported the charter back in 2009. And it was because we were assured that the council would continue to have checks and balances on the actions of the executive branch. I see that as being eroded. We were told that the passage of the charter was about accountability, that it prevented unelected staff from being able to make these kind of decisions. So when there's an attorney up here telling you all that the actions of a 5-person unelected selection committee somehow trump the decision of the city council, that to me is baffling. So what you're going to decide tonight to override this veto or not will not make the contract with OHM any more or any less legal. It's an unrelated matter. However, I feel, conversely, if you do not override this veto, if you do override this veto and the RFP process is restarted, as I think it should have been, it does not mean that OHM will not be able to compete for it or that another group would automatically get the contract?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Watkins?
Okay, it's time for this council to take the control back. You need to do it. This is spiraling down and the train wreck is getting worse. You have got to stop this. You are in control. We elected you guys to make decisions. So you have got to take control back. And I think tonight's a pivotal point in everyone's career up there. The mayor threw all of you under the bus on this one publicly. Not sure if it aired on Blab TV, but I watched it on the internet and it said Blab TV on the bottom, so I'm not positive if it aired on television. But he threw every single one of you under the bus on this issue. I don't really care who the vendor is. I fly in and out a lot, but I take my own food, usually from Sluggos or End of the Line. But I am offended that Chick-fil-A would even be considered to go on public property. That is outrageous. We are not North Korea, people. Take control back. I appreciate what you guys do. You have a very, very hard job. Please take the control back tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Bill McBride.
Madam President, members of the City Council, my name is Bill McBride. I live at 320 West Lloyd Street in Pensacola. I am here tonight to urge you to override the mayor's veto. He has repeatedly said that the selection of a concessionaire at the airport was a fair and impartial process, and I don't believe that's the case. I think you have a chance to take control of this process, and I hope you do tonight. There are three reasons why I believe it was not a fair process. Number one has to do with the consultant that the airport hired, who very obviously had a major personal bias against Mr. de Varona. I sat in on the meeting where the committee of five voted. It was a whisker-thin vote. I believe that the consultant had far too much influence over the entire process, and he was, again, someone who was disposed against Mr. de Varona. The second item that I thought was very, very important in the RFP was the encouragement of local flavor in the restaurants to be open at the airport. And I don't believe that OHM complied with that at all. We have three national companies. The last few months I've been in the Philadelphia airport, the Detroit airport, somewhere else that I forget, and there was a Chick-fil-A, and there was a Einstein Bagel, and they could have been anywhere. They had nothing to do with Pensacola, Florida. I believe we have an opportunity at the airport to put our best foot forward. More to that point, just tonight, you council people voted in favor of local preferences with your SBE vote. So there's the local flavor issue. The third issue is the service requirements of the RFP. 7-day-a-week service. And we all know that Chick-fil-A will not be open on Sunday. That will be their major food vendor. That's where you're going to get a hot sandwich, and they won't be open on Sunday, one of the busiest travel days of the week. So I put those considerations together. And this is nothing against the mayor. I just believe that he's on the wrong track here. You folks have a chance to take control of the process. It's going to take 6 of you to make what I know will be a tough decision, but I urge you to take that decision and override the veto. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorothy Dubuisson.
Good evening, Council, and thank you for listening to your citizens tonight. Several of the speakers have given a lot of the information that I would have shared with you, but I just want to remind you it was a flawed process. You saw that. You rejected the recommendation of the flawed process. You then rejected accepting de Varona as the bid recipient, and so the RFP was ended. You took action, and the mayor has vetoed your action. You have the chance to correct that veto by continuing to override it with a vote in support of the action which you have determined. Your action is legal. The mayor's secondary contracting that he did without regard and without reporting to you in advance was illegal according to the charter. And I would remind you, he and his airport director stood here and said OHM was not a part of the contingency plan. So either there was another contingency plan, which you folks have not been made aware of, or you were misled again. I would ask every council person to stand in support of your role, reaffirm the legislative role which you accepted on the part of this city, and vote to override the veto. Thank you.
Mr. Meade? Mr. Meade?
George R. Meade, 1009 North Ruth Street. And just for clarification, my last play, I want to make clear that I wasn't talking about Alkanese, I was talking about Jefferson and Maine. It was closed in 1954.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
Thank you. The issue here, I echo some of the sentiments given by Mr. Rigby and also the other gentleman who mentioned the city code portion, which I'm going to come back to. I don't represent anybody here. I'm a taxpayer. This is my money. This is my airport. I don't want something to be done that doesn't follow what our laws have set forth. And what we are doing right now, what the mayor is attempting to do, does not follow our law. 10-2-6. Sub A, which has already been mentioned by the other speaker, I, as a lawyer, stand here before you to tell you I agree with everything he said, and that the terms under which any vendor out there is going to operate have to be approved by this council, not by the mayor, not by a select committee, not by anybody but this council. And the bottom line here is the mayor can't authorize anything you have not set forth in those terms. This provision is clear out of the ordinance. Since that's the case, the only terms this council has ever approved are with the sitting vendors. Those are the only terms that have ever been approved in accordance with the ordinance. Not the OHM terms, which have not been approved by this council. Not the select committee and whatever else it's looked at. Those haven't been approved by this council. Nothing has been approved by this council except the people that are sitting out there. Now, do they have a contract? I throw my hands up. I don't know if they have a contract or not. I know that they're the only people who are authorized by law to operate according to the terms approved by this council. And frankly, if OHM goes in as the physical vendor, I don't think their agreement with the mayor is worth the paper it's printed on, because they're still bound to perform those services in accordance with the terms approved by this council, which I don't think they're really prepared to do. And I'd be interested to see what would happen if that were tested in court as to whether or not they can perform them except in accordance with the terms approved by this council. I reiterate, this council is the legislative body, and I agree with Mr. Rigby fully in that regard. You guys spend our money. You guys determine what the budgets are going to be. If this thing fails and if this goes through, I'd tell you right now, well, take it out of the budget. Refuse to appropriate. They'll be powerless. They can't do anything about appropriations. The fact of the matter is, you guys have the power. You need to make sure you keep it as our representatives so you can be responsive to our needs, responsive to the taxpayers, and follow the rules. That's all we ask. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. There are no cards, no lights on. Dr. Pratt?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to talk a little bit about the process and where we are. The mayor has implied, at least in the News Journal article, that the council circumvented the fair process. So let's talk about the process. An RFP was sent out that the mayor composed. There were submissions made. There was a review by a committee. Some people have alluded to some concerns about that part of the process, but I'll skip that. Next step, as the RFP said, it would go to the council for approval. I asked earlier, when it says go to council for approval, I was implying, does it mean that it has to be approved by the council? And no, that's not what those committees do. As we saw earlier tonight, We have great people who put good time into making decisions, and they're looking at it from one perspective. But it comes to council for policy decisions. And this council made a decisive action to reject the recommendation. It wasn't that we were undecided. We have these nice new buttons up here. We get yes, no, abstain. We don't get to say, well, gosh, I don't know, I'm okay with it. No, when the council votes, it's a yes or no, it's over. So then what happens? Well, we had assumed that we have policies, and we would follow the policies. They're council policies. But they weren't followed. And again, I'm going to quote a little from the News Journal article. So I'm a little concerned about what has happened. As the News Journal said, sure, it's an election year, and we anticipate some grandstanding. But in the long run, this situation could discourage competition. How will it look to companies who consider investing here if we dump a bidding process? And that's what's happened. The council rejected the bidding process. We would like to see it go back out for bids. But the mayor has said, I don't need to go for bids. And so basically he has chosen the alternate route, the backroom deals. Now, I kept in my files the Believe in a Better Pensacola mailer that was sent out about this new charter. Number 9, will the mayor be able to make side deals and backroom deals? As part of the checks and balances, all deals must be approved by the city council. 11, can the mayor move forward with projects without the approval of council? No, all projects must be in the budget and approved by council. This is what was promised to the voters, and this is not what has happened. I'm going to also mention something that we received regarding FAA processes and was it okay to do this by direct negotiation, which the city attorney has told us that this RFP process did end with that vote, and so this was done. While it was originally an RFP and these were a bidder in that process, this was a direct negotiation. And they said there's no rule against it, but because there is no competition for the award of privileges, direct negotiation is often avoided. This is the case even when it is likely that only a single proposal will respond in order to avoid criticism that the process lacks transparency or that favoritism is involved. Okay, maybe this time we didn't go with the good old boys. I haven't met the good old boys, but we didn't go with a lot of locals who a lot of people might say are good old boys. So maybe that makes it right. But ultimately, this is setting precedents. First, I'm concerned that council members would approve the mayor circumventing council policies. We have policies. We've been told the mayor doesn't have to approve them, but we should live by them. Our policies say that it should be done through an RFP process, and I think the council should learn. I don't think the councils who created those policies did it just because of a whim. They probably learned the hard way that this isn't the right way to do it. But ultimately, I'm concerned that this sets the precedent that the mayor can engage in large contracts without competitive bidding, without public input. This is a 10-year contract. It probably means there's no rule against a 20-year contract, a 30-year contract. This really concerns me, that this is the kind of government that we as a council are letting be created. I think it's time for this council to take control, as Ms. Watkins said. It's time for us to finally say, no, this isn't what the voters voted for with this new charter. They didn't expect the mayor to have unbridled authority. There were to be checks and balances, and it's time for us to put those checks in place. Thank you.
Councilmember Myers.
Yes. First, I want to echo what Councilwoman Pratt just stated so powerfully and eloquently. You did a fabulous job. I'm really proud of you. This is a serious crisis we're in, and I want to really bring this home to the public. When the mayor, through the city attorney, takes the position that the mayor does not have to follow council policies that were adopted by resolution, I want you to understand the magnitude of this. We're not just talking about an airport concession. I want you to go to your computers, click on the City of Pensacola, click on City Council, and then click on our policies. And I've given council copies of all of one page of the policies that were adopted by resolution in August 2010 to be effective on January the 20th, 2011, when the new charter took effect. We're talking about policies that cover all of our enterprises, policies that cover all of our financial operations. I mean, basically, the majority of policies that regulate how the city operates. So basically what the city attorney is saying, because I've asked him, is that the mayor doesn't have to follow any of these policies. This is really incredible. So what policies exist out here? You know, just willy-nilly, somebody wakes up in the morning, they have a bad hair day, and whoever is the mayor decides, well, I'm going to make this policy, and it's not a very good one. Or maybe that person, he or she, has a good hair day and makes a good policy. Now, we are the legislative body. We are the governing body. And I believe that these policies that have been adopted by resolution are binding on the mayor. Now, having said that, I know where this vote is going tonight. We don't have enough votes to override the mayor's veto because 4 city council members held a press conference with the mayor. And it's, according to the Pensacola News Journal, this was Friday, it says Hayward was flanked by council members Joel Cannada-Wynn, Brian Spencer, Larry Johnson, and Andy Terhaar when he signed the contract on Friday. A symbolic gesture intended to demonstrate that the opposition did not have the votes needed to overturn his veto. Now, I looked up the word communication. The definition of communication, Webster's dictionary, is this: the act or process of using words, sounds, signs, or behaviors to express or exchange information or to express your ideas, thoughts, feelings to someone else. This meeting, in my opinion, is a violation, or was a violation, of Florida in the Sunshine. Now, this is the second time Mayor Hayward has done this. When he has issued a veto, he's held a press conference with council members to send a message to the public and the rest of us that he has enough votes not to override his veto. Now, I have filed one complaint with the state attorney's office in the past, and nothing came of it. I want you to understand that in the law there are 2 types of penalties: criminal, which is very hard to prove, and civil. The first complaint I filed never went the civil route. I feel confident, based on all of the case law that I've read in Attorney General opinions, that this action by these council members was a violation of Florida in the Sunshine. They've already told us how they're going to vote. So we don't have, if they vote the way they've indicated they're going to vote, we don't have enough votes. At most, we will have 5, and we need 6. Hopefully, one of them will have a change of heart, a change of mind, and we'll have that 6th vote. However, in the meantime, the city council, desperately needs its own attorney, its own independent legal attorney. And I just had a conversation with a person who was involved while she was not on the Charter Review Commission. She attended all of the meetings. She's an attorney, and this issue had actually came up before the Charter Review Commission, that the city council should have its own attorney. Now, I believe that the citizens of Pensacola should be very, very concerned, very concerned. At this point, I don't know what kind of government we have. I apologize to the citizens of Pensacola for supporting the charter. I never dreamed it would be abused in the manner in which it has been abused. I had high hopes for the charter. Those hopes have been crushed, and I believe they have for a lot of people who supported it and a lot of the citizens. So I support the overriding the mayor's veto. I believe that the council has the authority under the ordinance and under our policies to extend the contract to Mr. de Varona. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Baird.
Thank you, Madam President. I've been reviewing the powers and duties of the mayor, which are selective, I think, which one's a power and which one's a duty in the definition of our current mayor. But one of the things that states in here, the very first line, the mayor shall serve in a full-time capacity and shall exemplify good citizenship and exhibit a cooperative spirit. When we got the first recommendation from the committee, I think it was September, October, sometime, it's a while ago, my fellow council member down here, Councilman Johnson, made a motion to postpone it. And then we waited about 4 months for it to come back to us, and it was not Councilman Johnson who wanted it to go 4 months, I don't think. I think it was the mayor who held it for that long, and I have no idea why he held it that long. When it got to us, we voted against the recommendation from the committee, and we fulfilled the requirements, I think, that were within that RFP process to take action. Within the mayor's powers and duties, number 3, to present recommendations to City Council on the requirements of its municipal government. Okay, recommendations, that's good. We want recommendations. It also, I think, one of the things that's been talked about was number 15, to determine, consistent with this charter, the organization of the city government and the power and duties assigned to the various departments. Well, that's fine too, but I see nowhere in these 15 powers, I realize what an executive power is, but I see no power to contract in here. In fact, in the ordinances, I see references to the ability to contract, and there are certain limits set on the value of contracts that the mayor can do without council approval. My concern is that that really affects things that the city purchases, not so much contracts with vendors. And that caused me to look at a bunch of other charters and ordinances today, trying to figure out what cities that have mayor council form of governments, what they do with this. And some of them do have it within the ordinances. They do have information on dealing with contracts within the ordinances. I just think that we have an area here that is not well defined in our charter. But it is clear to me that we are the governing body and that we are talking about resources and facilities that are within our purview as the governing body. And I think the mayor has acted without our authority. And I do obviously support an override of the veto. I realize that the mayor has said he will not recognize that. What he has essentially done is we ended the RFP process, and then he went out and just took the vendor that he wanted without a competitive process. And we just have to forget about the fact that we had an RFP process, because our own attorney has told us that the RFP process was over. And so, in essence, the mayor went out and picked whoever he wanted. And it could have been OHM, could have been Creative. And I realized that, and I think Mr. Hawthorne kind of alluded to, there could be some issues here if something happens, we override this veto, and we've got somebody that's got a contract with the mayor, and I just hope that the attorney's errors and omissions insurance is up to date in case that happens, because it was done based on his guidance. I hope that at least one of my fellow council members will do the right thing tonight. One of the four that was standing, two smiling, two not smiling in the picture, and, you know, join those of us who want to preserve a separation of powers within the city. And I am not flip-flopping on this like some people have done, and I have stayed steady that we need to enforce this, we need to override this veto, and I hope that we can come to a good resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Wu. Dr. Wu.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Before I say anything, I'd like to start off by saying there's nothing personal in any of the statements I'm going to make. You can take the names out, interpose the names, change the names. It wouldn't make any difference. I was simply going to vote, but I think this is too important an issue, too important a critical junction not to speak. For those who were not here, our former form of government was a manager-council form of government. By that, the city manager ran the government on a day-to-day basis. The mayor and the city council, by a majority vote, could fire the city manager at any time. The city manager hired and fired everybody that was on the staff. It's very similar to what the county has right now. They have a county administrator who runs the county on a day-to-day basis, and the county commissioners that sit there and approve or disapprove of what the administrator brings to him or her. I remember vividly the cap was $10,000 that the city manager could spend without coming to council. It was Tom Bonfield. Tom Bonfield then came to us one day and said, you know, to accommodate small businesses and make government a little bit more leaner, would the council approve moving that limit to $25,000 without coming to council for approval? And we said, certainly, we have no problem with doing that, as long as you tell us how the money was spent, even though it was after the fact. We then voted for a new charter. What we did when we went to the new charter is everywhere it said city manager, we took out city manager and we put in mayor. So if you follow that scenario, everything that comes has to be still approved by the city council. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I've heard from two tonight, and I've heard from lawyers that disagree with that. And I'm not intelligent enough to know which side is which. But I do know that Jerry Maygardner, who I consider a dear friend and a former Speaker of the Florida House, to be a very honest person, and he wrote an article in the Viewpoint talking about how deeply concerned he was about this. The reason I'm speaking is we're at a pivotal point. We're really, in effect, setting a precedent. We may not, in effect, have the votes, as Councilwoman Meyer says. So why am I speaking? I'm speaking because I have two grandchildren. And I don't want those two grandchildren to tell me one day, you could have taken a stand and do something, and you didn't. And I want it on record to say that I'm making a stand. And with that, thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Craig.
Thank you, Madam President. I realized in my earlier comments I spoke about all of the process, but not why I would like for this council to support this action tonight. I think that by overriding this veto, we're making a statement that we believe in competitive bidding, which results in wise use of taxpayer dollars. We believe in fair processes and transparent government. Extending this contract tonight provides an opportunity for this city to do the right thing, to do the process as it should be done and come out with a result that is beneficial to all. So I do hope that this council will be able to override this veto tonight, and that we also, as we go forward, consider the implications of many of these new legal opinions that have been flying around in the last few days, and how we make this government work for the people who supported it. Thank you.
Councilmember Myers.
Yes, and again, I want to echo what Councilwoman Pratt has again stated so eloquently, and again, I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, again.
I wish I could state my position as eloquently as you have. I do believe that there is a short-term fix for this, some of the crises that we have now. One of the ways that it can be done, I will recommend at the next agenda conference. But I think that the reasons Councilwoman Pratt has given are critical, that we do need to demonstrate to the public and to businesses that we believe in competition, that we believe in transparency in government. And if you don't have a competitive bid system, when somebody can just go out and willy-nilly negotiate for a contract behind closed doors, then we just have backroom politics. This type of government lends itself to corruption on steroids. We can't have that. We've had good government for years in Pensacola. We still have good government. We need to keep good government. And we need to override this veto. We need to override this veto. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wu.
I just remember something that I was going to mention when I talked about the county administrator and the 5 commissioners. If hypothetically the county commission went to, say, for example, a strong county person to run the county, can you imagine the county person, call it county mayor, making a decision without any input from the 5 county commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson has, there he is. Seeing no other, have no other cards, no other comments, could you please vote? Okay, motion fails 5-4.